So something I've wanted to do for a long time on this channel was finally finish the Persona 4 Golden playthrough that essentially started this channel. But because my computer can't exactly run it and record without freaking out on me, I decided to go ahead and just drop the series altogether and just kind of play it on my own time. But one thing I decided to do to make up for it is make a video and sort of talk about my experience with it. But what I didn't count on is this game being so freaking amazing. So instead of looking back on it and sort of going through which moments were cool and which moments I personally enjoyed, I decided to look at it through a more analytical lens since I really enjoy doing things like that. So again, apologies for not being able to share the full experience with you guys. But in going through Persona 4 Golden, I can honestly say, while this game has its faults, like every game does, Persona 4 Golden might have quickly become one of my favorite games of all time, and to me is easily the best Persona game I've played thus far. And while I do appreciate the combat and quality of life upgrades that we got in Persona 5, my previous favorite Persona game, what happened to Persona 4 Golden that Persona 5 failed to accomplish was how well they portrayed the characters and their struggles. And I think while Persona 5 was all in all an upgrade from the mechanics of Persona 4 Golden, Persona 4 did a much better job of pulling me into the world and viewing it not as a player of this game, but through the eyes of its protagonist, Yu Narukami. Honestly, Persona 4 Golden was a game that had a remarkably human side because of the growth that the characters go through and the struggles that they face along the way. And those are honestly things that can be found in a lot of people. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, some of these issues hit home and got me to shed a tear or two. But then I just realized that someone was cutting onions. Yeah, that's right. One thing the game does a great job of is talking about and reminding us about a power that a lot of us forget we have, and that's the power to face ourselves, like the title of this video. But what exactly does that mean? Well, that's what we're gonna talk about today. Also, I gotta say, if you haven't seen the true ending of Persona 4 Golden and gotten to the epilogue, or if you care about spoilers, you should probably click away from this video. And frankly, if you haven't experienced this game either through playing it yourself or watching a playthrough of it, I implore you to experience this game for yourself. But that being said, let's get into it. So I'll start off by saying this, Persona 5 is not a bad game by any means. So I'm not here to hate on Persona 5 or anything. As I said earlier, Persona 5 did a lot of things right. But I don't think Persona 5 really portrayed its characters as well and made them feel as real as they did in Persona 4 Golden. Because in Persona 4 Golden, these characters legitimately feel like they were made to reflect different aspects of the struggles we go through in our everyday lives. But we'll get there when we get there. So the basic premise of Persona 4 Golden is basically you take on the role of Yu Narukami, the protagonist. The game starts off with you in this town named Inaba and is transferring to another school as Persona protagonists tend to do. And as you go through and progress through the game, you learn that there's someone kidnapping people and murdering them, and it's up to you and your friends to find the murderer and solve the case. So the story itself is your basic whodunit murder mystery. And while I wasn't a particular fan of the story itself, I'm just not really a fan of murder mysteries, I am a fan of how the theme of a murder mystery played so well into the theme of the game, and that's searching for the truth. Which on the surface sounds pretty basic, you know, you're looking for a murderer and trying to solve a case, of course you're looking for the truth. However, what was special to me about this game is how the idea of seeking the truth was introduced in the context of a mystery, but then shifted and changed throughout the course of the game, and even more so as you meet the characters and go through their social links. Because it starts off as trying to find out who the killer is, you know, searching for the truth behind those mysteries. But the deeper you dive into this mystery and the closer you get to these characters who aid you in that task, the more you start to understand them. Throughout the course of this game, you find out the truth about these characters and get to see their innermost thoughts, things they would rather not be shown. And seeing that these characters are immensely flawed yet face the truth head on to progress and not only find the killer but to essentially change to become better people is something that I think we can all relate to. And as you start to see them interact with each other and start going through their social links and learning more about them as characters, you begin to feel as if these aren't characters in a game but parts of yourself. And one reason I say that is because of the way the main cast perceives their personas. How it happens in Persona 4 Golden is once they enter the TV world, they essentially meet their shadow. And what that shadow is basically a representation of their negative inner thoughts and emotions, the parts they're ashamed of. You know, this is something they would never want anyone to see. And the way these boss fights are initiated when you fight these shadows are when the person the shadow reflects continually denies that that's them again and again until they become a threat to our main characters. And it's only when they accept that the shadow is a part of themselves that they can utilize the power of the shadow as a part of them in the form of a persona, which is again basically their emotions manifesting into a physical form. And to me, that is a fantastic way to tie into the game's themes, but also teach a lesson to the player multiple times since the sequence happens multiple times in different contexts. Because while trying to search for the true identity of the killer, they end up face to face with themselves. And it's only when they can accept themselves for who they are, faults and all, that they can unleash their true potential. And honestly, while in the context of a JRPG, it sounds very exaggerated and overdramatic, but in the context of our lives, it's actually a very empowering message and one of the elements of this game that's remarkably human. It's the game basically telling us that no matter what we try to cover up and what we try to hide, there are always going to be parts of ourselves that you may not like. And that could take the form of many things because everyone is different. Maybe we wish we were taller, maybe we wish we were a more interesting person to talk to, and maybe you wish you didn't have a shadow that was trying to kill your friends. Whatever that may be, there are always going to be parts of ourselves that we try to hide from everybody. And the more we try to deny that part of ourselves, the more we try to deny that's a part of who we actually are, the more detrimental it is not only to ourselves, but potentially to those around us and those that we care about. And even though it may be tough to accept that that's a part of who we are, it's important to be honest with ourselves and accept ourselves fully for everything that we are, not just who people think we are. Where this point really hit home in this game was with Chie near the beginning of the game. What basically happened here is there are these two girls, Chie and Yukiko, and Chio is friends with Yukiko. They've been friends for a long time. But when Yukiko was kidnapped, they had to go and save her, but they ran into Chie's shadow along the way. And Chie's shadow basically revealed to our main characters that she secretly had always been jealous of Yukiko. And when Yukiko said she needed Chie, that made Chie really happy because it made her feel superior in some way. And of course, when our main characters see Chie's shadow, she quickly denies this, which leads to the boss fight with her shadow. And after defeating it, there was a part shortly after Chie gains her persona where she basically accepts that yes, this shadow is a part of her, but she also wasn't lying about being friends with Yukiko. And that to me was a scene that at first I overlooked, but when I think about it in retrospect, it was one of the scenes that was really important to the overall theme of the game and the lesson that it was trying to teach. Humans are multifaceted creatures, and while there are only certain parts we show to others, there are other parts that make up who we are that we may not be proud of. But it's up to us to accept that the parts that we see as shameful are also a part of us, and before we can change who we are to better ourselves, we have to accept ourselves for who we are as a whole. And we see this come up again in the social links of characters like Rise. Rise, before she joined our main cast, was a celebrity that was known all around the country by the name of Reset. She was an insanely popular talent who eventually quit the business because she felt that everybody she knew only focused on Reset and not the true Rise. She saw Reset as someone who was created to be sold to the public, and as a result, felt that nobody knew the true her. And as you go through that social link, you see her talk about all these things and basically say that she's happier now that she quit show business. But as you get into the higher ranks, you see her figure out that while Reset was the one people liked, Reset was also a part of her. And I think that lesson was one of the moments that really stood out to me because yes, in the context of the social link, it makes sense. But honestly, I feel like the same can be said about everybody who acts differently around other people. If I'm being entirely honest, I felt that because even as a content creator, there are moments where even I feel like I get caught up in becoming the person that people want me to be instead of being my actual self. And her figuring out that Reset and Rise are just two sides of the same coin was something that I feel could be said about a lot of people and is a somewhat universal concept. But there's something else that happens there that I actually want to talk about, because at that point in the game, Rise had already gotten her persona, she had already accepted her shadow. But there's something that I feel takes it a step further, and it's actually what makes up the social link. And a lot of the social links concerning the party members sort of build upon what happened when they first acquired their personas. They had already faced themselves and had the revelation where they discovered that people have multiple parts of themselves, but there was still much work to be done if they were going to change themselves. And Persona 4 Golden not only portrays this concept well, but does it masterfully. By having their social links linked to what happened when they first gained their personas, it shows you that even after you have that revelation, there's still an uphill battle to be fought. Being honest with yourself and being truthful with yourself about your faults is only the first step to implement lasting change. And during those social links, you see characters really struggle with accepting who they are. It's not just something that they realize and it's all fixed. The game actually shows the legitimate effort made by these characters to understand themselves a bit more over time, and shows that working on yourself is actually really difficult. And it shows the characters sort of going back and forth with themselves upon realizing these new developments, and even though they've begun to change, it is a slow and difficult process that has many bumps along the way. Earlier we were talking about Rise's social link, and there was a part in there that actually really got me emotional. It was during her rank 7 social link. Her former manager, Inoue, comes up to her and asks her one last time if she's ready to quit show business. And she says of course. Then he says something along the lines of, well, that's a shame, you could have been great. And then once he leaves, she starts crying, but she doesn't know why. And that to me was an amazing moment because it really drove home the point of being honest with yourself only being the first step. At that point, she had already made her choice, yet was somehow still very much affected by it. And that scene highlighted the internal struggle that comes with change because it's just that, it's a struggle. You're gonna have those days where you just don't know what to do and fight with who you used to be. But at the end of the day, it's still a necessary process because facing the truth, facing yourself, and struggling to become a better person is all better than staying the person you were. And honestly, at the end of the game, when you're in the Velvet Room and Margaret and Igor reveal what the Shadow World really looked like, I thought that was a really beautiful scene. Because the whole game, the Velvet Room took the form of a limo that was driving through the fog. And if you don't know, the Velvet Room in Persona games changes to fit the theme of the game. But when you get to the scene where the limo stops, you get to see the scene where you see that the world where the shadows live is actually this beautiful landscape. And honestly, this scene is what made the game for me. Because to me, that scene basically said it's only when we break through the fog of lies that we tell ourselves or that others tell us and accept who we are that we get to see something beautiful. And that's the capacity for growth and the power to change. So honestly, while this game has its faults, I'd be hard pressed to say that there's a game that I've encountered that handles its themes quite as well as Persona 4 Golden. So if you haven't experienced this game, you definitely should. Because what I talked about in this video was only a couple of lessons that the game teaches you. And some could even argue that there are even better ones than that in this game. I only chose these because these are the ones that spoke to me the most. Because at the end of the day, we all have those flaws that we wish we didn't have. Those faults and issues that we have with ourselves that if they just magically went away, we'd finally be happy and then we'd be able to accept ourselves for who we are. But I think Persona 4 Golden really drives home the fact that it's our flaws that shape us, and it's only when we take a close look at those flaws, be true to ourselves and accept them, that we can take the first step to becoming the person we want to be. And it all starts by having the power to face yourself.